So what you need to do, first you need to divide your space into random shapes. And the first technique that I'm going to show you is called a wash. Basically for wash, all I do, I take some paint and water in my brush and I run my paper, drag my brush around the surface, whatever I want to cover with water. Now this is called a wash. So the next technique that I'm going to show you, remember this is a wash.
Carrot, you do.
Okay, so the next one is called wet on wet. Now I'm not picking any color. I'm just picking, in particular order, I'm just picking whatever color comes to my mind. So for this, because it's basically focused on techniques and not on color scheme at the moment. So this is called wet on wet. I put a wash of paint down and then I take another paint and I introduce that paint to the wet paint. This technique is called wet on wet. So eventually when there is water, it just like merges together.
Don't you add salt or something?
I'm gonna do the next. Okay, since we are so interested in the salt technique, I'm gonna do the salt technique next. So basically you create another wash. For salt technique, one thing you need to keep in mind is that your watercolor is really liquid, because if it is too dry, your brush is too dry and your paint is too dry, it may not work. So then you take some salt while it is wet and then you put some salt on it. Do you know why this? And then once you leave the salt there so that it has time to absorb it. Basically salt, it's more like a chemical process. Salt absorbs all the moisture around it. So it leaves a nice pattern.
That's really cool, yeah.
And the next technique that I'm going to show you is called rubbing alcohol technique.
I drink that.
It's going to be on YouTube and the world will know that you drink rubbing alcohol. That will kill you if you do that.
Now y'all are discussing it.
Guys, don't try drinking rubbing alcohol. It will kill you. It is a chemical.
No, it won't. No, it won't. I do it. It's fine.
No. Whatever.
I mix it together. I'm just experiencing.
Okay, so I'm making a slightly darker color. Looks really interesting right now. Okay, it should be really wet for your techniques to...
Why are you doing this in our class? Our class is the worst class.
Okay, then you take some rubbing alcohol. This is really polluted, so I don't want to use this one. I'm going to use this one, a clean one. And while your paint is wet, you add drops of rubbing alcohol to it.
What the heck?
You know this.
I mean, chill out.
That's so cool.
It's not that crazy.
Okay, so this is rubbing alcohol technique. The next technique that I'm going to show you is called Saran Wrap.
Kylie, how are you feeling?
No, they look like eyeballs.
I accidentally dropped rubbing alcohol on this.
Shut up!
Alright, so now Saran Wrap. For Saran Wrap, all you need to do is take a piece of Saran Wrap and then you put it on the area that you want to cover. I guess I got some in the red. And then you just leave it to dry. The next technique that I'm going to show you is called crayon. It is called a resist technique because crayon has wax in it and will resist the water and paint around it. So now I'm going to take a completely different color. Guys, black is avoidable when you're doing watercolor because it's going to make everything around it weird. It is working. It will work. Eventually it will push it off. Okay, so this is called the crayon resist technique. I can't find my masking tape anywhere. I guess I'll steal some from here.
She's stealing her own tape. Ah, my leg itches.
Okay, so the next technique is masking tape technique. I will put this masking tape in 2 spots. One, I will put it on the wash because it's somewhat dryish. Okay, and then the second, I'll put it on the white space. Okay, so what it does, wherever you put the masking tape, it kind of creates a barrier and the color doesn't go in there. So I'm just gonna go over with a different, one more layer of red on it. The thing about watercolor, the more you overlap, the darker values you get. So I'm gonna go over it once more and you'll see. I'll take it off later and you'll see the difference in a bit. Okay, now I'm creating a wash on top of the tape. This is again masking tape resist because the area which is covered with masking tape will not have any what do you say, it won't have any paint on that area. So the next technique that I'm going to show you is toothbrush technique. Now when you're doing this technique, I want you to be careful around your friends because there's a possibility that the splatter will get everywhere.
I would, but I can't.
So then you just so you take paint, water and paint on the brush, and then you just pull it like this.
It's gonna get everywhere.
Okay, depending on how much water and how much paint you have, the intensity is going to change.
Doing it again.
So,
No, she's just holding the toothbrush. No,
you can't see?
That's really cool.
So basically this technique, remember the face of the toothbrush should be down and then you pull the bristles. Do you see it? I'm going to go slowly for you, kind of like that. If you can't see the color, I'll do one more color.
Hey, it's blurry.
It's blurry?
Or it was blurry.
Okay, so the last technique is the sponge technique. How did this happen? Okay, the last technique is the sponge technique. This video is gonna be put on your Google Classroom, so you can review it if you need. And you just take sponge, and then you just put on it. The beauty about sponge technique is you can put 2 unlikely colors. For example, I can put red and green if I want to get cool, interesting pattern. Okay, is that good enough? Awesome. So these are some basic watercolor techniques and you can create great textures with it. Now I have a handout for you which is in this bucket right here. Okay, you can look at this handout and work on it as well.